Hey everybody, my name is Wes.
And I'm Lori.
Lori, today we're talking about accounting. Oh man, this is a fun one. This is the time of year everybody's getting everything set up and just preparing.
Wes, it has been a little bananas. And you know how I feel about fruit.
and so just quickly introduce yourself to everyone so that way they know who you are, because a lot of people used to see me, but they don't get to see you all the time.
That's fair. I am Lori. I have been at ChurchTrac for 11 and a half years. I am the support manager among other hats that I wear, but accounting seems to be the thing that I do well.
And today, it's accounting. But before we talk about accounting, just a few things to remind everybody about. First and foremost, if you like to learn how to do things like ChurchTrac by watching videos, we have a great YouTube channel. You should totally check that out. I actually learned how to fix my garage door the other day watching the YouTube video.
I wondered how you did that. I wondered if it was a YouTube special.
Yeah, and also a really great resource that we have for all of you ChurchTrac users out there is our Facebook group. That is such a great place. I see so many good conversations happening there.
Oh yeah, and interesting things, like interesting shares. It's quite a conglomeration.
Conglomeration is a good word. Well, because people are talking about so many ministry things that aren't even ChurchTrac related, but I love seeing that, you know. And then the last resource I think we have to remind everybody of, that getting help in ChurchTrac, super easy.
Yes, it's so easy, guys. There is an orange help button in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and it doesn't matter what your tone is, it's always orange. In that orange help button, the help is amazing. So depending on the screen you're in, it's going to give you specific help topics, or you can show all help topics. You can ask us a question. You can create a support ticket. You can schedule a phone call. There are so many resources. But you know, I actually love our user guide, Wes.
Yeah.
It's so helpful. It's got pictures, it's got videos, it's got how-tos. So no matter what you're doing or what type of learning you have, we touch on it.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times it's already got all that info, and so sometimes when people ask us a question, they don't realize we have a support article that has a video right there, and so we send the link and they're ready to go. Right,
it's so easy to use. Even I can do it.
And we're going to be mentioning a few different things today, especially as we talk about getting started, setting up, all that. So kind of just a quick version of what we're going to be doing today. So today we are going to have a Q&A at the very end.
Yes, we are.
And we are, spoiler alert, we're actually going to have just a finance Q&A in general next week that you can sign up for, which I think is going to be bananas just like today is. But we will have a Q&A at the very end. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I've got one of our people on our team that's actually monitoring the chat this whole time, and they're going to try to answer the questions the best that they can. Now, obviously, if you ask a question that they just can't answer in this sort of environment, you may need to just create a support ticket, just because we are talking about accounting here. But we will have lots of time to answer questions at the end and everything as we go through that. But today, we're going to talk about how to set up accounting and just kind of the initial setup. What does that look like? We're going to talk about the core features. We don't have time to cover every core feature like in great depth, but at least to give you a good overview. And then we're going to talk about some pro tips that you and I kind of got together yesterday, just brainstorming like, hey, if a church knew these 5 things, like what would they be that makes them kind of successful with ChurchTrac accounting?
Exactly.
So, all right, well, Lori, let's just do a quick overview, like 2 minutes, like just give everybody the lay of the land of the accounting screen.
Okay. So when you go into ChurchTrac, your menu is on the left or at the top. You're going to select accounting/budgets. This screen, when you initially go into the screen, is going to be a big blank like this. It's just going to have your tabs across the top. It's going to have your additions that you're going to add and even a quick watch of video. I love this, Wes, because you can get the helps. So the very first thing that we suggest, especially we being me, I suggest is building your funds. And a lot of people don't know what funds are, Wes.
Yeah.
Funds are, if you will, by definition, the designation or the bucket that you're going to keep your monies in within your bank accounts. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is create your funds. And the default, Wes, is the general funds.
Yep. And by default, every ChurchTrac account has that.
Every ChurchTrac account has it. You can add the funds that you need, but typically 5 to 7 is max. I've gone in and seen 30 funds, and that gets a lot to manage, especially if you have a lot of bank accounts.
Yeah.
So it gets a lot. Once you have your funds in place, Wes, you're going to create your categories. Each category has a default fund option that you're going to want to assign. Okay, so if you're doing missions, you're going to want a missions category and then a missions fund so that they're linked. And the reason you're making these connections is because in giving, when you're assigning contributions, you don't use funds, Wes. You only use category designations. That category has a default fund in the background that's going to work automatically. So you're setting up and providing a foundation, if you will, for your accounting to work well. Okay. Once you get those two things in place, you're going to go in and create your bank accounts. This is going to be your main checking. If you have a savings account, you're looking at a liability account like a credit card, CDs that the church may have, whatever accounts that deal with bank information are going to be built here.
And this is something I think a lot of churches that are coming from programs, because I see in the chat a few people are saying QuickBooks and other programs similar to that seem to be the most popular options people are coming from to ChurchTrac. And I think chart of accounts is one that kind of throws them off because they're used to chart of accounts. They come over to ChurchTrac and they see categories and they're like, okay, so do I put all this in the accounts tab? And so we see a lot of people make that mistake.
And it causes a lot of confusion because of terminology. Our help guide actually provides the definitions of what we mean when we say bank account, category, and fund, so that you have that data right in front of you. And one of the things I do want to point out about our user guide is in our user guide, we actually have a topic called Getting Started with Accounting. Remember I told you there are videos, Wes, that you can watch?
Tons.
Then we have hyperlinks to specific things like navigating through accounting, how you set things up, switching from QuickBooks because that's a really big, complicated process, and we want to give you the tools to make that change. Okay? The next steps, and then other resources. One of my favorite other resources, Wes, is this new accounting chart that we have in place that actually gives you a great overview of how accounts and funds and categories intermingle with one another.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit just so I can see it a little better?
Maybe. There we go.
Yeah.
You're testing my knowledge.
Sorry, you've got glasses on and I don't have glasses on, so I needed that.
This will print out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Cool.
So we did make sure that that was there because this is such a great tool. Again, we put our definitions on here and an example of a transaction that you can create once all of your parts and pieces are together. Okay? Okay, what else, Wes? Let's see.
So that's just kind of
that quick overview.
Going through now, you kind of already alluded to setting up how you went to the funds and then you went to categories and then going to accounts. So let's kind of dive in and let's just create one in each one of those things. Okay. That way people can kind of see the idea of how to set it up, at least on the most basic level.
Sure. So one of the things that I will tell you, Wes, is when you're doing accounting, and one of the things that we say in our help guide is that once you get things set up the way we tell you to set it up, and you want somebody to look at this, create a support ticket, send it in, we will take a look at your accounting before you do 2 or 3 months worth of data.
Yeah.
And then find it doesn't work right. Because we want it, again, to be foundational from the get-go.
Yeah, and by us catching things early on, it saves a lot of time.
And both in support and in functionality. So keep that in mind when you're doing this, is we really want to make this work best for you. It's not as complicated as other programs, but it's still accounting.
Yeah.
Okay? So in the funds, when you go to create a fund, when you click the add fund, you're going to type the name of the fund here. One of the things that you're going to note is that there are designated contributions and there are designated spendings that occur that need to be grouped together. Missions, youth, children's ministries, ladies ministry, men's ministry, these kind of things. So by creating your funds to begin with, you're actually setting things up to be able to use them later.
Yeah.
Okay? You do not enter balances in this, Wes.
That's for later. Yeah.
Yes, that's for later when you're creating your transactions. So once you get your fund set up, which this is actually probably the easiest part, then you move over to your categories. And you're like, okay, so I have these categories. These come built into the program. I haven't built these yet, okay? But when I want to add a category, I just go to the add button. I do missions income. And the reason I call it missions income is because when I'm entering this, Wes, in the giving screen, I want to be able to quickly identify it.
Okay.
Okay, you can have missions expenses, you can have missions as the parent category, but you're probably going to have two sets, one income and one expense delineator. So you want to build subcategories under that.
And this is something I see common for a lot of churches is they'll have like missions income, missions expense,
right,
and then whatever income, whatever expense for all these other categories as they keep going.
Now, when you build these, it's really important to note, Wes, that they go to the bottom.
Yeah.
They always go to the bottom. But when it's highlighted blue, you see the properties. These properties mean a lot because remember, we just named this missions income, but it defaults as an expense. So we have to change that. Make sure you catch that because if you don't catch that, it's going to affect how your transactions report.
Yeah.
Okay? The default fund is going to be my missions fund. I'm setting up my foundation. And then if I need to go add missions projects that I have, such as foreign missions or local missions or shoeboxes for children or whatever. Yeah. You just go in and you keep adding, and then there's a subcategory of option that you just go in and select and say, where do I want it to go?
Perfect.
Okay.
Now, one thing I see category number, and this is something I get asked all the time from churches, because they're used to having categorized numbers for all their different areas. So if that's something a church wants to do, they can leverage that.
You can leverage that. And Wes, what the category number is typically used for in ChurchTrac, I'm not saying across other accounting platforms, but in ChurchTrac, the category number is for ease of entry when you're entering giving. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1,007 or whatever you want it to be. Yeah. But it really doesn't have this grandiose purpose of delineating income and expenses within ChurchTrac. It's correct. What you could bring from another platform if you're used to, but it's not a required field in our program.
Cool.
Okay. Accounts.
Now this is the big one. This
is huge because these are, and I can't iterate this enough, bank accounts.
Yeah.
These are not your categories. When you add a bank account, we take you through a series of questions. This series of questions is for your benefit. Is this an actual account held at a bank or financial institution? If you say yes, it takes you to the next series of questions. Do you have recent statements for this account, or can you retrieve a statement online? Because you're going to need a starting date and a starting balance from the statement. Now, I know what this says, and I understand how the program is intended to be set up, but I want to explain that in a minute, okay? What type of account is this? Is it a credit card? Then it's a liability. Okay. Is it a bank account, like you have liquid assets in there? Oh yeah. So we want to put what kind of account it is. Is it Bank of America? Is it your checking account? Is it, I don't care what you call it. You can call it peanut butter and jelly sandwich as long as you know what you're calling it.
Now, I see a lot of churches, and I actually did this too, is using just the last 4 digits of the account number like you just did. That just makes it easier if your church has multiple accounts.
Right. And for linking purposes, later on down the line in your setup, you can do that as well. Okay. Your next button is going to say, what is the start date of this statement? Every bank does this differently. I can't tell you what that looks like. That's why it's really important that you have that documentation in front of you when you're doing this, okay? I suggest that you go 1 day before the start date. This is why.
Okay.
That 1 day before the start date is going to allow you to set this up to show your records moving forward. Okay. So if your bank account, if your statement starts 1/1/2025, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but we're here. Use your bank statement 12/31/24, so it doesn't look like you had an influx of money on the 1st of January.
Okay.
It's more of showing how your finances were when you were getting started.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see, we're going to pick that date. Then what's the balance on your bank statement? So your starting balance is $12,334.29. Do you think I can remember that? $12,334.29. I don't know what this would be for. But when I create my account, that's what I'm starting with. Okay? So now, Wes, it's important to go into this checking account and look at my beginning balance transaction.
Okay.
all of the money in your bank account, Wes, may not be from tithes and offerings.
Correct, yeah.
It might be missions money.
Yeah.
It might be that you have a building fund going and you have money set aside for that.
Yes.
You have to take into consideration that when you set this account up. So your beginning balance transaction is indicative of where the money belongs within this account. So if I picked a really hard number to start this with, you know that, right?
Yeah, you did.
That wasn't very smart on my part. We're just going to do this one at a time. If I have missions that I'm waiting to send, okay, I have to pick that one, that are in my missions fund, and this is $1,000, I have to keep in mind, and you don't really have to do this, I do this on paper, but, and then I have my youth ministries and expense category, but you get the idea. If this was building fund, if I have everything built in place, my beginning balance transaction is going to reflect where my money belongs in my bank account. And that way, when you close this transaction to save it, guess what? That changes to a multiple category transaction, Wes.
Okay.
And my beginning balance reflects it here, but when I go back out,
this is key.
now my funds update.
Yes.
So my bank account balance and my fund balances match.
And this is probably one of the most common things I think we see from churches that are just starting out is they're like, how do I get money into my funds? Which
Right.
we have a whole video where you show all that. But it's good to just kind of see this in real time, that it's really just a matter of editing that initial transaction. And then you're ready.
And I go in, Wes, I go in and check out people's accounts, and I will see this beginning balance transaction. Instead of them modifying the transaction itself, they're doing all these fund-to-fund transfers, and they're getting all complicated, and then everything gets all messed up, and then they're confused. And I'm like, this is one of those moments where you just have to keep it simple.
Yeah.
You just have to keep it simple. Now, Wes, once you get all this in place, and you build this whole process, there are payees that are in place here that you can go in here and set up. Now you say, well, how do I do that? Well, there's two things that you can do. You can go in here and you can add a payee manually. Mm-hmm. I didn't spell electric right.
Eclectic bill?
Electric bill. Electric. I like it. Okay, and I can go in and I can set up all of my categories here. Or within your bank account, Wes, you can add a transaction. This is how you get your transactions in your bank register. You add a new transaction. You put your reference number. If you're paying electronically, you don't need a check number.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying electronically and you're sending a check, okay, you can go in and put this, and I can choose my electric bill, or I can say this is my water bill. These are such good descriptors, aren't you? Aren't you just tickled pink about it? I don't know that I got this, but I don't. So then you set up your categories, you write your transaction, you save it, and you can save this payee for quick entry.
Yeah.
Don't build it and then use it. Build it as you use it.
And I think that's
easier.
why it's so important to show this before we get into like just all the core features, because I see a lot of churches, they want to just go and say, all right, all these memorized transactions, my payees,
right.
I want to go ahead and add those first. If you're going to be adding all this stuff in anyways,
you
might
got
as
to
well
write
do
your
as you got it.
bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to write your bills. You may as well just go ahead and do it that way. Okay.
All right. So that's everything as far as just initial setup. Now, obviously, we didn't add a bunch more accounts and a bunch of different funds and categories, and it's very church specific. But in general, I mean, that's how you set up accounting. Now we get into the good stuff of all of the core features of accounting, all of the things going on in here. And you've already kind of alluded to the first part, that account register. So let's take a look at just some of the cool things you can do with that.
So we switched accounts, thanks to Wes. So in here, this is an example. This is Wes's potential account. And we have a checking account, a savings account, a credit card liability. We have a building loan and a petty cash account. And people go, well, how in the world that's not a bank account? Well, that little cash box that you keep in the office, in the safe, or underneath the desk, or wherever you put it, that's still church money. So you want to set that up. And when you're adding your new account, remember, it asks you, is this an account held at a bank or financial institution? If you say no, The next selection says track petty cash.
I just love how it guides you.
Yes.
For someone like me who I'm going to be honest, I don't read like I should whenever I'm setting things up and stuff.
You're looking for keywords.
I am, or pictures, but this is actually good because it just helps guide people through, especially people that are accounting maybe just like scary to them, or they're like, oh, another accounting program for me to have to figure out and learn, and after I just learned this other one a few years back.
Right.
So in terms of all the features, obviously we're not going to have time to like go into great detail of everything, but let's just take a look at some of the features, at least let's go to enter a transaction.
Okay. Do you want to check in account transaction?
Sure.
Now, keep in mind, in here we have a build out of funds, okay? Now, remember I said 5 to 7 funds. We have a few more in here, but these are just examples of things that we have seen. Categories that are already linked in here to different things, including our pledge campaign. That's a giving thing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. In here, one of my favorite things, Wes, and I know this is just me being OCD, so bear with me. But this right here, the show 10 entries, I would rather scroll through this than click across 48 pages. So if I go up here and I say, show me 100 entries, then I can sort through a whole plethora of entries and not have to change pages.
Yeah.
It's just one of my weird out things. Anyway, let's go add a transaction. This is a 2 scroll. There's a scroll here, and then there's an outside scroll too, by the way. Okay, add a transaction. What am I adding?
Anything. Maybe it can be Jimmy's lawn care. I don't know. Got to pay the lawn guy.
So in our references, Wes, we have a next check number. This is going to pull from your other check numbers. The highest check number you had in there, it's going to add 1 to it and put that in here. So you don't always have to enter a check number. You can do the next check number and it'll autofill.
Okay.
These are references. These references are important, but they're not the end all be all.
Okay.
Okay. So if I want to put credit card, it's a free text box too.
Oh, I didn't know that. I learned something new today.
Bada bing. Okay. So if I'm going to pay my credit card account, or this was a credit card payment or a debit card payment, we'll just do debit card because that's better in this instance. See, I even changed it.
Okay.
Okay. I can tab through these fields. I can select a payee that I already have in place. I can also search a payee. There's Jimmy's Lawn Care. Because I set up my payees, or I've paid bills with this automatically before, my category's in place. It's coming from my building fund, and Jimmy gets paid $300 each time, so it autofills, and my notes here.
Yeah.
If Jimmy sends you an invoice, Wes,
you can drag and drop it.
Drag and drop it. Just scan it in with your phone, save it to your computer, put it in your iCloud account. There's so many features. You can also memo this. This memo prints on the check. Thanks, Jimmy, for a great job.
And I just want to ask in the chat, and obviously if you're watching YouTube and Facebook, we're not monitoring that, but for all of you in Vimeo, have you ever had it happen where you're just going through and you're trying to do an audit of your church and you're looking for a transaction and you're having to sift through a bunch of receipts and everything? This is a great feature. Being able to drag and drop those things on there, so you digitally have all of those receipts and invoices from all those vendors. And it's stored in your file storage within your ChurchTrac program too. Yeah. That's the cool part too, Wes. So it's searchable. So now you've got everything in place, you literally save it and boom, there's your transaction. And I know you guys are thinking it's not that easy. I promise you, it really is that easy. It's so easy sometimes it's difficult, Wes. Yeah, well, and that's kind of the funny thing, the inside joke here is that some of the accounts we see that really make a massacre of their accounting is because they are CPAs or they're someone who's been in accounting for many years. Or been using another option, which we will not mention. And it's so complicated. They overcomplicate it, and they bring that mindset into ChurchTrac. And we always have to remind people that, ChurchTrac works a lot like a checkbook, which I don't get that reference much because I've never used a checkbook. But for many people out there who have, they're going to find, oh yeah, it really does. So one of the best things that I heard recently is one of our people made mention that she was in a corporate world, and corporate finance is very complicated. And it is very complicated. Yeah. And it's intentionally complicated because you're invoicing people, then you have to receive payment on invoices, you have to have all these things in place because you have the customer side and the business side, and I get it. And it's not cash basis, and so you're double entry, and so, yeah. And it's just so difficult to process.
churches don't invoice.
No.
Churches don't have a business side and a customer side. They have a church side. So simple, easy to use financing is the best option, Wes, because you're actually able to provide transparent reporting with a program that provides you all the complexity you really need.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have multiple income streams and you're, supporting, multiple houses that you're renting and all these other things, it's really not necessary to have such complicated accounting.
And that's one thing I think we always try to be very transparent about too. Like if a church has got a lot of different income streams and they have multiple businesses running out of this church that are not under the umbrella of being tax exempt and stuff, then this is not going to be the solution for them. But I think for 95% of churches that use ChurchTrac, this is the solution that's going to make their life easier. All right, so
that's the key, Wes. It's going to make their life easier.
Yeah.
If they can simplify their thinking.
All right.
That's the big F.
So moving past simplifying thinking and using all that, let's talk about just kind of one of my favorite features, and that's bank sync and import, just because I'm like your typical millennial, Lori. I don't want to have to enter stuff manually if I don't have to. And I think a lot of church leaders are in that boat where they're like, hey,
it's time consuming.
Yeah, I just want to hook my bank, to it and pull in those transactions, or can I just import everything over? And we can do that.
To a point.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm going to correct that, because we do get this question all of the time. Bank sync allows a connection between ChurchTrac and your bank account and Stripe, and the Stripe being the middleman. And Stripe is who you would you would actually go in and link with, and they talk to your bank. So that indication over here is that the bank talks to Stripe and Stripe talks to the bank. Once Stripe and the bank communicate, then they send us back the communication. So we're just the third party that's getting the information at the end, okay? So if something's not coming through, there's not always something we can do about it, Wes.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have seen of late is that the import, which is your bank statement. By the way, I'm old school. You know that. I'm old. I'm old and I'm old school. So that control of that bank statement is, I like to have it because I check things off. The beautiful part about the reconciliation process in ChurchTrac is you do check things off. You put your information in here, you change your date out here to whatever is on your statement, you continue, and you have check boxes.
Yeah.
So it's easy to do with that, okay? But if you're going to sync or import your bank statement because you have a digital format, if it's in a PDF, I can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you have that digital format and you can import, you're going to go to that little button at the bottom of your bank account transactions, and you're going to be given the option to upload a file, or if you have actually linked your bank account, you can go out and request that information to come in.
And just to show that real quick from the account screen, to link a bank account, you go to link accounts.
And this is just the account screen. You click the button. It opens up here on the side and says, none of your bank accounts are linked. Click the button below. You go here to link it. It gives you a disclaimer, okay? Only select bank accounts you want to sync, okay? You continue, and it gives you the screen to link your bank accounts.
Yeah, and then from here, when you agree, you can search your bank.
Right.
And so, for example, if my bank was ViStar, I could pull that in.
And I didn't even spell it right, and it still grabbed it.
Yeah, and this works with about 95% of banks in the United States. There are a lot of small credit unions that are on here, I see all the time. The only caveat is occasionally we'll see some banks that don't sync very well, just because, and it's the issue with the bank. Because they haven't updated their stuff. Or
they have a multi-factor authentication for a commercial account, Wes. So so when you do make the connection, there's two login places. I think it's your email and your password. And if you are using a commercial bank, some, not all, but some do require a code. And there's just not a place to put that code yet. We're working with Stripe to get that rectified. So this is a process that is in place that we're trying to get to the positive side of, but bear with us. And sometimes your bank will also allow you to turn that option off. We have seen that with some of the banks.
But we see a lot of churches, I mean, they use either or, whether you decide to use bank sync or you decide to just go straight to that particular bank account, and then, as Lori shows, importing that bank statement. And again, just to show it off, Lori, when you scroll down, that import button is down there. And from here, you can go ahead and then add that transaction.
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Her mouse stopped working. There it goes.
Here we go.
And then import. And
it's really cool. It's literally drag and drop, Wes, and I do this all the time because I test things for customers and that kind of thing. So the fact that they can upload a file or they can sync, as long as the file format is correct, if you have difficulties, you can always send it to us. We'll look at things. We can also give you information to take back to the bank and say this isn't filling in the right fields. Yeah. Because we've done that too.
And while we're here, before we go away, that actions button, that's so key just because we have all these other options available.
So key.
But you can actually create rules. And so when you're importing, because let's be honest, the bank is, much as we would like the bank to give us really nice looking reports, they don't.
They don't. They absolutely, and some of it is an ease that we can't really understand that's not helpful to us in our checkbooks. Yeah. So these rules actually help a lot. You can, Wes, who is not much of a rule follower, has created a lot of rules in here, and I like it. Yeah. But when you add your rules, it gives you options, ways to this. I did this for a customer the other day, and I think it was an eye-opening moment because he didn't have any rules in place and he was having difficulty with his imports, and he didn't understand why things were duplicating. And so by adding the rule, it prevented some of the duplications that he was seeing. Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
Now, some other core features to point out. So ChurchTrac, you can print out onto your checks. And so back to our account register.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, you can print out onto your checks. So it doesn't print out the entire check. It prints out into your existing checks you have. And you can do that either by printing out just a single check directly from the transaction, or you can print out all your checks in one big old swoop if you want to do that.
Big old swoop here.
And I just appreciate that you can adjust what type of checks you're using and stuff like that. And I've got a whole backlog of checks in there just because that test account, I'm always messing around.
But Wes, this is what's really cool about this is there's a check all button. So if you had 10 people that you were paying this month and you wanted to run all the checks at the same time, you click check all, and it will just go through and print the checks in the order that you wrote them. And so that's a nice thing. Or you can check just the checks you want and print them. The key to printing a check is you have to have a check number in place.
Yes, you have to have a check number. If you don't have a check number in the transaction, it is not going to know there's a check to go with it.
That's right.
And we talked a little bit about reconciling earlier, but I think we need to talk about reports just because that's a big aspect of accounting. Just to kind of quickly, just the first one I think that I run into all the time, especially when I'm doing like getting started live streams with new people who are in trial in ChurchTrac account, is their income statement. And they're always wondering, where's my income statement? Where's my balance sheet? Or
they call it a P&L.
And that's what I was going to say or they're like, hey, where's the profit and loss statement? Where's my P&L statement? And I always have to remind them that, hey, we're in fund accounting, not fun, which it can be fun.
Hey, I nerd out, and you know that I do. So I don't actually mind accounting. It's one of those.
Well, and that's why you're talking today and not me. But the income statement, for those of you who are coming from something like QuickBooks and you're like, where's the P&L? It's your income statement.
It's your income statement.
And it's just because we're doing fund accounting. And in fund accounting, that's the terminology that's used for it.
Right. Your balance sheet, and there is a misunderstanding with this report as well, Wes. This shows the value or balance of assets and liabilities on a selected end date. So it's the beginning of your use of ChurchTrac, regardless of what that date is, to an end date. So I always say it's the beginning of time because time being what's in your ChurchTrac account.
Yeah.
But this has no bearing. So when you run your balance sheet, it's going to pull from every data entry you have through the date you ended on.
Yes.
Okay? That's very important to note. And we get that all the time is this report's not working. It actually is working exactly the way that it's supposed to work. We have added some new reports.
Yeah, there's a lot of new reports.
We've added a fund sheet, which allows you to run a report per fund and see the exact same information. So I'll pick on that fund right there because I was using it. So it just shows your missions fund. When you go back, we have a fund statement that does the same thing. So if in fact you want to run you have 15 funds, not recommended, but there are churches that have it, and you just want to see what's in each fund, you go run your fund statement, and it's going to give you your balances. We'll just do, I don't want those because nobody wants to see zero or unused categories, and we don't want inactive categories. That's why there's buttons are there, is for you to choose. And then it tells me, oh, we've already paid out our disaster relief. That's why that's empty. That's a good thing. But that gives you the opportunities to run those. Now, Wes, there are some really cool reports in here. These reports apply to funds-based accounting. So when you're running a category overview report, or and you want to see the subcategories and that kind of thing, you have to understand this is not per account. Categories and funds are not account specific.
They're all everything.
You can run them across the board. Remember, that goes back to our chart where it shows the fluidity of those funds and categories. So when you run this category overview report, it's going to show transactions that occurred during your date range up here, but it's also going to show what's going on with these categories.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of account. So if you say, well, that's not how much money I have in my bank account, that's okay. Remember, this is showing the use of your categories and where the money, how much money you have in them, not the account that they belong to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reports, and I don't want us to nerd out too long on them because I know you can.
I'll behave.
But I just want to point out, you can export most of these accounting reports to a CSV file if you like to live dangerously and,
Or you want to customize your reports.
Yeah.
So there are details that people want to see in there. There is also the ability to change your date range. There's 2 ways to change a date range, Wes.
2 ways.
2 ways. You click in the white space and you go January, and then you go up or down for your years, okay?
All right.
Or you do the drop down. This is just a pre-selection for easy reporting. But if you want to see what happened in a quarter or whatever, I have people that say, I can't go back in time. Well, kind of you can't using the drop down arrow, but if you click in the white space, you do get that calendar. So
yeah.
I try to always impress on my team to show people that, but it can be confusing. You can also just go back like this if you want to, but I just find it's easier to do my selection. Okay.
Cool. Now
don't forget to pick your day.
We talked about payees a little bit already, but just to kind of reiterate, your payees, you can add all your payees. We even have a payee report at the very bottom. So if you need to generate a list of all your different payees, you can do that. And I think what's that little download thing there? You have to refresh me on that one.
It's just an export.
Okay, so that exports it to CSV. Perfect.
Wait, how do you sort them, Wes?
However you want.
But I need these in alphabetical order or order of use. How do I move them?
Just hover over the little arrow to the right.
That's right. It becomes a little hand, and you just hold your mouse down and move it around wherever you want it. And that's the beauty of that. So these are not sortable as in an ascending and descending or alphabetical. You move them into the order you want them. I personally would put them in order of use, but some people like them alphabetically.
All right. Well, now 2 more quick features. So the search feature, this is a feature where you can search your transactions and you have so many parameters to search with.
Feature.
And this is a feature you would probably say that you use most of the time when you're trying to help someone in a deep support issue find a missing dollar amount or whatever. And so if you're like, hey, how in the world does ChurchTrac support team find this stuff so quick? We are using the same tool you have. We're going into your account and using your search bar. So I encourage you, if you're struggling and you're trying to figure out where did this money go, what did this particular dollar amount go to, use your search bar and it's going to make your life easier.
This is where I nerd really, really bad.
I thought you already nerded out. This is like even more.
Oh my gosh, I love this tool. This is my favorite feature probably in all of our program, because I can use this tool to find anything I need to in the accounting registers.
Yeah.
So if these people have years worth of data, I can go in here and expand my date range, which a lot of people forget to do, but go back. I can do a reference. I can search my accounts, all of them, or just one. I can search all of my categories. I can include subcategories if I have a parent that I want to search for. Funds, different amounts, they equal or they're less than or they're greater than.
You can search tags too, which we didn't even talk about tags.
We haven't yet.
Maybe another day.
Accounting tags. there's consistency involved here. You really have to be OCD to really effectively use tags, but
Yeah.
This works. Report titles. You can title anything you want to, but even reconciled statuses of transactions. If you're looking for a transaction that's not reconciled and you know it went back several years and you got to find it, bing, it's so cool.
Well, there you go. Now I know for Christmas I need to get you something accounting related that has to do with search.
I'm an investigator.
And then the last thing I think we just need to bring quick attention to, we're not going to really go into depth of it, but creating budgets in ChurchTrac. You can create a budget for your church very quick and easy. You simply just go to the actions. Yep, create new budget.
First thing is you create it, then you name it. Total.
Toe
day. And then what day do you want to start it?
You can do it today.
Let's go back and start it in September of 24.
There you go.
Okay.
And then you can just check off all of the different categories you would like to apply. Or what I would recommend is you just click that actions button and then have it just check all the categories, and then you can uncheck the ones you don't want.
Right.
And then when you're done, you just hit the create budget button.
So we don't need that one. I'm going to just get rid of a couple things. I don't want that in my budget. I don't want that in my budget. I don't want that in my budget, but I want the rest of it.
They get the idea. All right, so we create the budget, and that's it. It's in there.
It's thinking, boom, it's created.
And then we just start adding our dollar amounts to all those different areas. Just click it, add the dollar amount, it's done. And then here's the cool part. We have a bunch of budget reports built in here as well that you can monitor your budget with. But when it comes time next year to create your church budget, you've already done all the legwork. You can just clone a budget, and then you're ready to go for the next year. And so a lot of times we see churches, their first year of using our budget tool, it takes them maybe 20, 30 minutes to create their budget. And then the next year, they literally can create their budget in 5 minutes. And they're changing a few dollar amounts, whatever, and it's kind of nuts.
And they go, well, where do I find my budget? Well, you got all kinds of budgets. Which one do you want? We got a 2025, we got a 2024, we got some examples, boom.
There you go. All right, now Lori, so we've covered just a quick overview, initial setup, and we've talked about just kind of some of the core features. We obviously didn't hit on every single feature. It's so incredibly hard to hit on every feature. But I want to give everyone just a good takeaway with these last 5 minutes of content before we dive into a bunch of questions and stuff. Just some pro tips that I think are going to help church leaders really get the most out of this. All right, so pro tip number 1.
Set up your payees.
Set up payees.
Remember, you can do this here, or you can do it as you're writing your transactions. But Wes, this is a game changer.
It saves you so much time because you're not constantly having to retype in people's information.
You're not recreating the wheel every month.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, automate your accounting transactions. What we mean by that
so that's pro tip number 2. Automate your accounting reports.
Yes, I'm sorry, I read transactions.
Yeah.
I combined 2, so that's okay. So there is a feature that we did not talk about, and that is automations. Now, every month, somebody needs a report for accounting. There's accountability, accountability.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, you want to go into your automations, which is your settings and automations it's a very last selection.
Yeah, this does not live on accounting. This is on the settings screen, automations tab.
That's because automations have multiple functions, but accounting reports is one of those functions.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're going to go in here and you're going to add, this is accounting report.
And this would be an application automation.
Okay. And here you have some options here, but we're just going to go in here and we're going to add it. And then it says you don't have any actions yet. What do you want to do? We're going to add a new action. We're going to send an email of an accounting report. And you say, wait, this goes back to the other thing you can do is create and automate your accounting transactions. That's one of my favorites, Wes.
Yeah.
But this allows you to do your monthly things and just have it drop in automatically.
Because a lot of times we're generating reports for giving or accounting, and we're doing this once a month or every week we want a certain report. Why not have the system just do it for me every week?
Well, the report selection list is limited at the moment.
Yeah.
Notice how I threw that in there at the moment. There are changes coming. It's on our roadmap. You just have to be patient and wait and see what happens.
Okay.
So we want to send the income statement. We're going to send it to Matt. And then the date range is, when do you want to send it? How often you want to send it? Well, last month is the better thing. And we can actually save the action step. Tell it when you want it to run. How about every month on the first day of the month at 9 a.m.?
So every first day of the month at 9 a.m., Matt is going to get last month's income statement.
That's right. And so it's going to tell you the financial position of the church. And you know what? You just save the changes and then it runs automatically because it's running based on a schedule.
And what's cool is we can add multiple actions here.
Yep.
And so if you had
going.
like a giving report you wanted to go to another user or to Matt, I mean, you could just keep repeating this.
Right. For the pastor, you can send him new people that have visited. There's so many different things you can send. But the idea is it's automated and I don't have to think about it because it went out. And I recommend sending it to more than one person. Like send it to yourself so that you also know that it happened.
Sorry, I was going to say, for those of you who are watching this in the future, rewind and rewatch what I just said because this is key.
It's key.
This feature we just showed you all is probably for many of you going to save you maybe 20 minutes of your life every single week if you're sending out a lot of reports to people. All right, another pro tip. I want to hurry and get these last two out of the way, or three actually. Use accounting tags to better delineate your transactions.
Okay.
And that way it just makes searching for them easier.
So I'm going to just go back into the transaction we created and okay, yard maintenance, tenants. Is that right?
You're wearing glasses. I'm not. This is
well, we're
going to
go with this, and then I'm gonna hit enter. It just turns to be a blue label. That blue label is then searchable in my favorite tool. What is my favorite tool, Wes?
The search.
Woo! Okay, so then I can do this, but then by also using these, by delineating these transactions, we know that Jimmy's lawn care. We know it's maintenance and repairs, but I have another search tool to utilize just to make sure, okay? And it saves. Last thing, use transaction attachments. We have talked about this.
We already showed it earlier, but man.
I mean, it's huge. So you would go to Walmart, you spent $30 on the youth ministry, you have that Walmart receipt that's killed a tree.
You take your phone, take a picture of it,
and put it and just send it.
Throw it in there.
Yeah, put it on there. This allows you to see, because a year from now or 2 years from now, nobody's going to remember what they spent this on.
Nope.
But if this was, say, a puzzle that a giant puzzle the youth was putting together on youth night, this would be a reason you went, why did we spend such an odd number?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would have that there.
Now this is really we put it as a pro tip, but it's really just a please do this because it's going to make your life so much easier.
Please,
reconcile.
Reconcile.
We should have put the Bible verse on there about.
I forgot it.
Oh man.
Being reconciled.
Yes, but by not reconciling, it causes you to be in a situation where there's less accountability and less
transparency.
I don't want to say eyes on there, but you're not looking at your accounts enough if you're not reconciling.
Well, and you
because
don't know
it's a
you've missed
fail-safe.
something, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the point where I've synced or I've imported my bank statement, and you get. I see this all the time. They go in and. Why does my mouse keep messing with me here? I'm going to do it this way. Go in, and I got to go to the bottom of this transaction to reconcile. And you see all these little C's because I imported my bank statement. Mm-hmm. A little C, Wes, means it cleared the bank.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that account is reconciled. A reconciled transaction cannot be changed.
Yep.
A cleared transaction can be changed. So we get this time of year. How do you close out last year's books? Well, you reconcile your bank statement. Then nothing can be changed. I've gone into accounts and seen 5 years worth of banking that has not been reconciled.
Yep, and for some people, they're just like, I just didn't think to do it. So if you haven't ever reconciled, you can still start. And if you are just getting into this is a good habit to get into.
Very good habit to get into. It makes your life so much easier.
All right, well, Lori, we just covered enough that as much as we could in 45 to 50 minutes here, but now that was a lot. And I think the best thing for all of you out there is to go back, look at some of our user guide articles, definitely watch the Getting Started with Accounting video and how to set up accounting. One thing I do want to just kind of throw out there for all of you who are just getting started, or if you're watching this in the future, hello future, one thing we offer is a service, we call it CLASS, which is short for the ChurchTrac Limited Accounting Setup Service, which is such a long name, but basically it's a service that we offer. It's completely optional, but it's geared towards church leaders that maybe don't have the time, Lori, to set up their accounting, and they just want to have us set it up for them, so that way they can just hit the ground running, or someone that maybe just doesn't feel comfortable and is like, hey, I was going to pay a CPA to do all this, but can I just have y'all do this? So it's a great option.
What we're doing is we're taking the data that is provided to us and we're building that foundation for the church. And then they take the foundational data that we have provided from their information and they are off to a running start that way. It's expensive. As far as, small churches have a difficult time with it, larger churches, not so much. But it is such a fantastic investment in your church. Yeah. That's what you're doing, is you're investing in the future of your church and it moving forward smoothly. And we see this every day where this treasurer leaves and this treasurer picks up and they don't know what this guy did because it didn't make any sense and it didn't follow the rules of ChurchTrac and how do I make this right? And if your foundation is strong, Wes, your house is going to stand.
Yeah.
That's biblical, by the way.
Oh, yes. We hope you enjoyed watching today's recorded live stream. Now, you didn't get to join us live, but that's okay. If you do have questions, just reach out to us by going to churchtrac.com/support.